Good afternoon, everyone. It's 2 o'clock, so time to make a start on today's planning committee meeting. Right, item 1 on the agenda. Are there any apologies for absence?
I have received apologies from Councillor Mark Foster, who is being substituted by Councillor Richard Welton, and also from Councillor David Cheetham.
Thank you, Torrent. Item 2 on the agenda. Members are requested to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest and or other interest not already on their register of interest in any item on the agenda and withdraw from the meeting at the appropriate time. Do any members have interest to declare?
Yes,
Councillor
Chair.
Cooper.
Thank you. As ward member for Pilsley, item 5, I'll be taking my 3 minutes as speaking and leaving the room after that.
Okay. Thank you for that. Item 3, declarations of predetermination. Any member who cannot determine an application solely on the information presented to the committee at the meeting today is asked to declare that they are predetermined on that item on the agenda and withdraw from the meeting at the appropriate time. Do any members have any predetermination to declare? Thank you, members. I'll take that as a no. Right, we now have the minutes of our meeting held on the 4th of November 2025. Are we happy that they are a correct record? If we can just have a show of hands on that, please. Thank you. Right, item 5 on the agenda. The first application is in respect of Aldgate Farm at Pilsley. It is planning reference NED stroke 25 stroke 00703 stroke MFL. Right, as Graham isn't very well who's done the report, I'm going to hand you over to Adrian Kirkham to do the presentation. So over to you, Adrian. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd just like to refer members to the late representation pack that was issued to you yesterday afternoon, and also, Chair, to note that we undertook a virtual site visit yesterday morning, followed by a in-person site visit this morning, which yourself and colleagues attended. So just to note those points, Chair. Just in terms of this application, it's an application for a battery energy storage system, a BESS system, with a variety of additional and associated works on land off Hallgate Lane at Pilsley. The application site, Chair, outlined, as you can see on the screen, there is a track that meets with Hallgate Lane at its eastern end and then flows through the site to the BESS application site, which is at the northwestern corner. And this slide shows the application in enlarged form, as I say, the access at the eastern end and the basic facility area at the northwestern end. This is the application site, Chair, outlined in red, with all associated land owned or controlled by the applicant in blue. And you can make out the right-of-way running through the site that we walked this morning to the application site itself. And that's the application detail imposed on that drawing, Chair. As you can see, the majority of the development is at the northwestern corner. That's set out in the introduction to the officer report as to what that constitutes. And then there is a track that runs through the site and accesses at a new access point on Hallgate Lane itself, which again we saw this morning. The facility comprises a number of elements, the tallest of which is approximately 7.5 metres tall. And again, Chair, just in terms of the landscaping and the mitigation that's been submitted, as we saw on site this morning, the area where there will be some additional tree planting is at the western apex of the site, and you can see that at the arrowhead at the upper element of the drawing, and then the application site running away with the track through it to the access point on Hallgate Lane. In terms of the development itself, there's a couple of cross sections there running through the site. The AA line is the line that runs west to east, and the BB line is that running north to south. And as I've just mentioned, the highest point of the development is about 7.5 metres high, which are the inverters, with the majority of the rest of the development at a lower level, with the perimeter fence at 2.8 metres high. In terms of the impact on various points close to the site, Chair, this is a slide that just identifies the distance to the two schools, the railway line to the west, and also to the northwestern apex of Pilsley Village, which is to the southeast. And just a couple of photographs, Chair, to provide an aide-memoire to what we saw this morning and yesterday. The new access will be formed in the hedgerow that lies just to the left of the telegraph pole at furthest right on the slide, and then we'll run along the hedgerow through the site to the Bess area. And then, Chair, again, as we saw this morning, this is taken from the public right-of-way, there or thereabouts, and the application site is in the field just beyond the sole tree that occupies the very centre of this photograph, and you can just make out the pylon at the middle left of the slide, and that is the connection to the grid that will apply to the development. So the majority of the application site is in that field beyond that single tree, connected to the grid at the pylon, and we're on the line of the footpath, which is roughly the line of the track, again, as we saw this morning. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Right, we have 4 speakers on this application, first of which is Councillor Andrew Cooper. If you would like to take your seat, Andrew. Pretty sure you know the format. So when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members and officers. I'm not speaking today basically against or for the application, although it's obvious that an amount of harm is going to be done to the countryside in this location, and I think that's without question. Is it enough to reject this application? Well, that is for members to decide today. If, though, this application is successful and officers have recommended to grant permission, it is, I'm aware this is not a planning consideration. I would suggest that members ask the applicant whether they have considered offering the community some sort of community benefit were the application to be granted. These battery energy storage systems are expected to be built all over the UK, and it is my belief that the community should benefit in some way. Don't forget, although this is in Pilsley, the next one may be in your ward, as there are a large pipeline of hundreds of potential projects that are consented and in various stages of the planning system. These are to meet the government targets. As stated before, I'm aware that no community benefit fund has been put forward as part of this application, and it is not a material consideration. I just think it would show a degree of community interest from the applicant to speak to and work with concerned parties, particularly Parkhouse School and the Parish Council. Finally, I'd just like to say thank you to the officers for a full and concise report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Do any members have any questions for Councillor Cooper? No, thank you. Right, the second speaker on this application is Claire Davis. You have 3 minutes when you're ready. Thank you.
4 generations of my family have farmed in Pilsley for nearly 100 years. This land was part of Parkhouse Colliery before being extensively open-casted. It was reinstated to a poor standard, resulting in land with minimal topsoil, which cannot sustain traditional crops and needs to be enriched annually. It has taken decades of hard work to achieve what people see today. Where there were only concrete posts and wire, we have planted hundreds of metres of hedges by hand, added dozens of trees and created a spring-fed pond. We also maintain at our own expense 7 public footpaths totalling nearly 2.5 kilometres and 17 stiles, enabling the public to engage with the countryside. The land is currently used as summer grazing for our suckler herd, but small-scale farming is becoming increasingly economically unviable, both due to substantially increased costs and the loss of some grants and subsidies previously available to us. 10 years ago, there were 11 small working farms like ours in Pilsley. Now we are one of just 4. Paragraph 3.4 of the North East Derbyshire Local Plan supports diversifying the rural economy to promote stability and prosperity, while paragraph 88 of the National Planning Policy Framework encourages the development and diversification of agricultural businesses, which this proposal would help us achieve. If approved, this proposal would be a much-needed lifeline, providing us with a better financial footing to continue to manage the countryside and the public footpaths into the future for the benefit of all. More money would also mean more jobs would be sustained for local people, both indirectly and directly. Overall, we feel this proposal is an excellent use of the poor quality land, and we genuinely believe it would benefit the environment, the area and the people of North East Derbyshire. Thank you.
Thank you. Do members have any questions for the speaker? No, if you'd like to retake your seat then. Thank you. Right, our third speaker on this application is Martin Burden, a supporter as well. If you'd like to take a seat, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, you have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you very much. My name is Martin Blunden. I'm the Managing Director of Green Fire Solutions, with the UK's leading fire safety consultancy for energy storage systems, and we have over 200 years' experience in the fire and rescue service sector. We are generally drawn from chief fire officers or deputy chief fire officers who've served in the UK Fire Service. I retired in September 23 as the Chief Fire Officer of Scotland, one of the largest services in the world, and had 30 years' experience and have now been working with Green Fire and companies like NRA since then. I understand concerns about lithium-ion batteries and scooters, particularly when we see issues with skateboards, push bikes. But however, what we're talking about today is fundamentally different. Electric scooter batteries and grid-scale BESS represent lithium-ion technology optimised for completely different missions. E-scooters prioritise portability, user convenience and cost-effectiveness, accepting shorter lifespans and higher replacement frequencies. BESS systems, and there are approaching 200 now in the UK, prioritise longevity, grid stability and industrial scale safety, justifying massive infrastructure investments through decades of reliable operation. On this particular site, there are 2 international standards that this site will comply with. The NFPA standard, which is the National Fire Prevention Association 855 standard, and it's the standard for the design, construction, installation, operation, maintenance and decommissioning, so effectively the cradle-to-grave standard for battery energy storage systems that applies worldwide. And this has just been refreshed to a 2026 standard. And then the Universal Laboratories UL 9540A standard, which evaluates the mitigation and effect of thermal runaway in batteries. This site also complies with the National Fire Chiefs Council guidance on grid-scale batteries. The UK and the Republic of Ireland are leading the way with energy storage across the world. We have the lowest rate of incidents across the world. We have the best a health and safety framework that exists across the world, and we have various safe installations in the UK. As part of the process, we have been engaging with Derbyshire Fire and Rescue Service. At the initial consultation stage, there was no objection. And if this was consented, we would engage all the way through the process, pre-construction, construction, pre-energisation, and then also through the way through to operation. Chair, I could talk about BESS for a very long time, but it might be helpful if I answered any questions that your committee may have and may wish to ask me while I'm sitting here.
Thank you. Do any members have any questions for the Speaker? Councillor Liggett.
Safety management plan, basically, if the worst did happen, because these fires do happen.
They do?
What happens about pollution, i.e. air quality, and the nearby school?
Okay, so the nearby school is about 560 metres away. So we did some plume modelling as part of the application process to look at what would happen in a fire in a container and then use the last 60 months data to see which way the wind predominantly blew. The modelling is done by the scientist that we employ, and he takes the specific container and then looks at what happens when something burns and what happens in the smoke plume, the unburnt products of combustion, because not everything burns. One thing we do know very well about lithium fires, they burn a lot hotter than normal fires. They burn up to 1,000 degrees, so we get a lot cleaner smoke than we would normally get. But that doesn't take away from the hydrogen fluoride, which is in the smoke plume. Now, we model that in particular because that's the one that's the most at risk for people. And when we model that, and we model that with the distance, we have a maximum of about 40 metres from the point at which whichever container is involved in a fire, 40 metres, up to 40 metres would breach the workplace exposure limits. After that, it wouldn't breach the workplace exposure limits. So if you think of a standard bonfire, we've all stood around bonfires, and if we're very close to a bonfire, smoke close to the bonfire is very it's normally about head height. But then as smoke cools, it raises and gets dispersed by the atmosphere. The same happens with the BESS fire. So in terms of smoke plume and the toxicity when there's smoke plume, you've got workplace exposure limits up to about 40 metres at 2 metres height, and then it disperses into the atmosphere. So in terms of the school that's another 520 metres away, whilst they would see the smoke, potentially smell the smoke, there wouldn't be any toxins within that smoke plume because they would have dispersed by the time that they got to that school if the wind was blowing in that direction.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Jones.
Right. Could you tell me, when you have a fire, you have to hit it with a lot of water, about 2,000 litres per minute, yeah? Which means you've got to have about 2 hours supply of water. How much water have you got supplied here? I can't tell what you've got in the fire water containment pond.
Okay, so I'll deal with that one first. If I could go backwards and I'll answer that question first. So the National Fire Chiefs Council guidance talk about 228,000 litres a minute, 228,000 litres over 2 hours. That's 1,900 litres a minute. So that's contained within the site. What happens with the water, if there was a fire on a BESS site, you don't put water onto a battery that's burning, you boundary cool, or you put water on the adjacent containers. Right. So effectively you're squirting water on a waterproof steel container to keep it cool. And we saw this at a fire in Ilford earlier on in the year when actually that worked very well. It was laid out in exactly the way this particular site has been laid out.
You just leave it burn?
Yeah, it stops the heat flux, so you get heat radiation onto the adjacent containers. So no water goes onto the fire. If you put water onto a lithium-ion fire, you then get hydrofluoric acid. Yeah. So we make sure that doesn't happen.
So the 2 tanks you've got here at 120,000 each, that's about 2 hours.
That's about 2 hours.
So in actual fact, the fire water containment is an extra capacity of water?
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
A pleasure.
Thank you. Any further questions? No, if you'd like to retake your seat in the gallery.
Thank you, Chair.
Our next speaker is the applicant, Stuart Hammond. You have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you, committee members. Thank you, officer, for writing a robust report in favour of the application, recommended approval. I won't take the full 3 minutes. I think I can be clear. We've worked with a landowner. We look for capacity. We are driven by capacity in the grid. And at this moment in time, there is capacity in that overhead line, and we've located ourselves on that. We've worked with the landowner in terms of their least sensitive area of their farm, and we fit in with their farm operation, not only financially, but in terms of access, choosing a field which doesn't undermine their farming operation, as you've heard from the landowner themselves. We do intend to obviously give them a 40-year income over a 40-year period, and that enables them a safe, secure income so they can robustly, navigate what may lie ahead, whether you like them or not. Jeremy Clarkson's series has shown how difficult farming can be, and this lady of the community has expressed how it's gone from 11 to 4. In terms of who we also work with, we work with robust consultants. You've just heard from an ex-fire chief who's probably seen things much, much worse than we ever hoped to, and speak objectively on matters of fire safety. We acknowledge that this is in a community, and we acknowledge that there are concerns. However, we've robustly addressed them. The officer raises no issues. The consultees have no objections. And as you can see, there's a lot of effort that's gone into addressing that, technical and scientific as well. Lastly, I just want to touch on what was said by the councillor, the ward councillor. We have engaged directly with the community. We've engaged with them. We've engaged with the parish council. We spoke at the parish hall. We also spoke at another venue as well to help more members of the community engage with us. We had fire officers there. We had noise consultants there. So all in all, we undertook three briefings. We also did letter drops as well. And we have wrote to schools. We've wrote to both schools, Parkhouse and Pillsley, offering them STEM incentives, help with their science, help with their maths, and received no response. I've received no response to those offers. With regards to the funds and the parish council community benefit, at the briefings we asked what people would like to see, and most of the post-it notes didn't really have anything anything tangible for us to put into. But we've always come with the offer of a community benefit fund. It's just not necessarily been accepted at the time of submission. So just wrapping up, as you can see, we work with the landowners, we work with scientific and technical consultants, no objections have been made, and we are willing to work the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do any members have any questions? Councillor Leggett.
Yeah, I've got two, please. First of all, I'm a little bit confused by the 7.80, highlighting the benefits of the scheme, benefits to the local biodiversity. I'd like you to explain that one, because obviously you're removing 48 metres of hedgerow. So I'd like to understand how it's going to be a benefit to the community. And also my second question was, why is it temporary? Why is it temporary? Because that's just I'm interested. Yeah.
No worries. So firstly, with regards to your point around ecology and biodiversity, so you note that there's removal of those hedgerows. However, we're planting a significant amount more. One thing that the officer did miss is he noted the trees are being planted in the apex of the field. However, there is a significant amount of new hedgerowing going around the immediate compound. And then in addition, we are gapping up some of these hedgerows to account for that. In terms of the works themselves, we've been supported by FPCR. On this one, we've been supported by Ram Sanderson, who are a local Midlands-based ecology firm, who have close ties with Derbyshire Wildlife Trust. Derbyshire Wildlife Trust raised no objection to this, but we can undertake the works with their guidance, so we can have an ecological clerk of works on board. But we're also very aware that we can undertake these outside of breeding birds seasons, and we can make sure that what we do plant, we plant and we sustain for those 40 years. In terms of the percentages, we've got a 40.75% gain and a 10.71% gain in terms of biodiversity. So I appreciate they're just abstract numbers, but if you focus on what we're planting, it's more than what we're losing here. So we are planting more of greater, diverse, species-rich, which enables foraging, insects, birds, badgers, so on and so forth.
Are those hedges going to be looked after?
That's correct, yeah. So,
and looked after and
yeah,
etc. while they're growing?
As part of, since the Environment Act, since the requirement for BNG upon major developments and minor developments, it is controlled by a legal agreement. So we will maintain that for 40 years. There'll be a habitat maintenance and management plan as a part of the condition, and we will set that out, how we will do that, how we will deliver it, and how we will maintain it. And then the monitoring of that is captured by a legal agreement for 40 years. In terms of the 40 years, it's to do with the connection agreement with the National Grid, and it's also to do with the option with the landowner.
Okay, thank you.
After the 40 years, though, it will return to farming if the landowner wishes to do so. It's, we don't leave it there.
Okay. Councillor Jones?
I'd like to ask you about the battery replacement life. Condition 22 sets out a replacement battery delivery management plan. There's no reference to how frequent that is, okay? In my career experience, the whole life cost of a mechanical electrical plant is normally about 25 years. So when I do a whole life cost, every 25 years, I replace the mechanical electrical plant. The life of a battery is shorter than that. So the question for you is, how often will you have to replace these batteries in the 40-year life of that plant?
So let's not look at this as the full container. Let's look at this as, if we break it down, those containers contain racks of batteries. So we're not simply removing that full container.
Yeah.
So you're not going to see, that isn't a backdoor way of me getting HEVs through a community. What I'm trying to say there is, in the event of an issue or a key piece of kit being replaced, we've offered up that condition to make sure that we can deliver it sensitively, because we appreciate that the access is, in a residential area. So we offered that up to the officer, because we want to be here for 40 years. We want to be part of the community. So when we do, if we have to deliver something by HEV, we want to make sure that there's a letter drop. We want to make sure that the schools are aware. We want to make sure that people and everybody's safe. In terms of your question, the one around the lifetime expectancy, yes, you're about right, about 20 years. But those batteries are plug and play, so we maintain them. We have vans going out maybe once or twice a month that will look after the kit. It's weatherproof in weatherproof sealed containers. They will monitor it, maintain it, and they will repair it as it goes. And then if a battery was to break, we don't necessarily have to bring that by a HEV. It can come via a van, because it's like a plug and play. You think about it a bit like Lego, to use an analogy for the community members.
Are you saying that you're planning on replacing the batteries in 20 years?
No, remember, I don't want to get caught up on it'll be all new containers. We may bring them in vans.
But you still got to replace a container every 20 years.
No, the container itself, you don't have to replace. It's the housing.
Right.
It's the bits in it. To break it down, let's say, when you take your car to the mechanics, the part gets replaced, not the full car, if that makes sense, not the chassis.
Yeah.
In the event of a crash, I accept that, or in the event of an issue with a key piece of kit, then we have that condition there that we offered up. I'd like to keep reiterating that, so we can be clear with people that something is going to be delivered.
Okay, looking at a little battery, that battery life is 20 years. So you are going to replace the batteries twice.
Understood, yes, understood. Yes, so yeah, I understand what you're asking now.
So therefore there will be further access to the site.
Correct, yeah, and I don't think we've not been disingenuous or not transparent.
No, it's been quite clear. There's no problem there. I just want to understand.
Understood.
Thank you.
No, it's a good question. Thank you.
Can you turn your microphone off, William, please? William?
Oh.
Any further questions? Yeah, Councillor Peterson.
What safeguarding are you going to do for the footpaths and the people who obviously are going to use those footpaths? Because I think you've got two major ones crossing the site. Are you going to shield those footpaths from your site so that they can walk up with?
So I missed the first bit, but you're basically saying what impact will arise, if any,
Yes.
to public rights of way?
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, across there's much more public rights of way that are managed by the farm. The two, I guess, you've noted, one of them is in no real way impacted, but I understand that two of them originate from the corner, which is the point of access.
Yes.
So what we will do is we will look to keep them open for as long as possible, but there may be instances where we have to close them or temporarily divert them. But the majority of the layout, should I say, has been designed to enable that users can use them unfettered. So our access track isn't on top of the public right of way. If one wanted to use our access track, you know, feel free to do so. And then if you look at the swept path, it's nice and clear, it's nice and open, and they will turn across it. But during construction, we will have banksmen, safety operatives, and that crossing, that junction will be heavily managed and maintained, and that's captured by a construction management plan. Once we're built, we won't, you know, we will quite happily leave that to be just, you know, ticking over. In terms of impacts, you know, the views themselves, there's a level drop. You know, we're nestled in the bottom of the field, so it's unlikely that we'll be seen because of the additional planting as well.
Thank
No
you.
worries.
Right, thank you. Anybody got any? I've got a question for you. Just regarding, I went on the site visit this morning, and I did notice that there's actually a field just before the access to the site field, where the hedgerow is extremely broken along there. Have you got any intention to do anything with that because obviously ramblers have raised concerns, and that would do partly some of the shielding, certainly from the footpath as you're walking down.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, the sort of the tumble down hedge. So as part of our engagement with the community, we heard your view, but we also heard the view that people enjoyed the open expanse of the view across to the west. Then your objective landscape officers, they were appointed by yourselves, said that actually it would be a bit non-characteristic to fully gap it up, so just to put a full one there. But it's something that we can look. I do believe we have a landscaping plan, and I do believe we can look at that. If you want it to be more heavily planted, it's something we can look at, subject to it not being impacted on the farm operation. I think that's a good middle ground if that's something that members would like. And we can submit the landscaping plan, we can touch on that point, and your officers can obviously brief you of it when it comes in.
Okay, and my other question is, and I know you've answered this slightly, is regarding the community fund. It would be good if, I know you've not had any response, but I think it would be good going forward that you continue with trying to make that engagement and work with the parish council and the schools.
I can only ask. If I don't get answers, don't get answers. I mean, that it is, I can only ask. And I have asked. I've asked the school, I've sent emails and I can provide them to the members, because I do believe that there is an opportunity for STEM benefits here. You know, not necessarily just money, but I think, you know, but like I said, Chair, I can only ask, and we have asked.
Okay, thank you. I've got no further questions. Anybody else? No? Right, if you'd like to retake your seat.
Thank you for your time.
Right, members, it's now time for questions to officers. So, Councillor Liggett.
First of all, this confusion over any money for the community. Why do we normally have 106? Is this exempt from 106s? I don't understand it is. That's my first question.
Just in terms of 106's, Chair, as members I'm sure will be aware, it's to mitigate the impact of the development. So it's normally through housing developments where you have additional pressures on school places, doctor surgeries, there may be highway impacts. So you would be seeking mitigation often in a financial form to mitigate those impacts. In this instance, there is certainly an officer view, no overarching impact on the infrastructure that development would impact, and therefore it wouldn't be appropriate to seek any financial mitigation in this instance to meet the various tests that are set out in the legislation. If, for example, this development was needing an upgrade to a road to a double track or a dual carriageway, for example, that may be an instance where you would seek financial mitigation to provide that infrastructure to meet the impacts of the development. But in this instance, there is none of those social impacts that would normally require Section 106 agreement. So it's normal practice in these instances not to seek any mitigation, because there isn't any social mitigation to offset.
Okay, fair enough, Adrian. Can I just ask?
Yeah, good, yeah.
Also, I'm a bit concerned about this. If there is a fire or if there is water runoff, I've just found this, that the local planning authority should ensure appropriate mitigation is in place for the containment of surface water and rainfall runoff in the event of a fire and subsequent disposal of this contained water off-site. That worries me slightly, because that sounds like it's now over to you. And it does say at 7.82 that there is surface water runoff into the River Rother. So,
Just coming back briefly, Chair, to the community benefit, just to finish that off, I apologise, I didn't mention this first time round. There's nothing stopping the applicant engaging with the local community to provide some community benefit. It's often the case in circumstances such as that relationship is forged, but in this instance it wouldn't be a material consideration for you to consider in the wider context of the 106 legislation, the way that it's worded and intended to work. So just to finish that up, just to stop that out of planning relationship happening, and that's something that everyone I think would see benefit in, but it's just not contained within the planning framework. Just on the surface water, Chair, and fires generally, you heard earlier about the fire risk and the work that's gone into that. Colleagues have both worked with and visited the site with the fire officers as set out in the report to consider this issue, and it's normally a matter that is dealt with at the post-planning permission granted stage. So it's through the building regulations process that the fire service can then get involved in the way that these sites are managed and are maintained going forward. So again, the fire impacts isn't something that we would ignore, but it's dealt with by other legislation, so the building regulations stage, and the fire service in this instance have gone through that process and are aware of the scheme and will work with the developers should you grant consent this afternoon. In terms of surface water runoff, the officers, Chair, have responded to the comments that have been submitted by the various bodies to provide mitigation regarding surface water runoff, and we're of the view that in normal circumstances that will be dealt with. A fire would not necessarily be a normal circumstance, that will be abnormal, and we have made no specific provision for this, but we believe that will be addressed by the conditions that are put on and have been advised to us by the lead local flood authority.
Just sorry, Chair, just off the back of that, what Adrian was just saying there, so condition 6 obviously goes into some detail about the battery safety management plan. There are various bullet points listed, and you know that includes access to water supply and the various issues that were being talked about. So just to be clear, the recommendation does include a condition to deal with those issues. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that. Any other questions? Councillor Gay.
Yeah, can I just confirm that the only hedge that's being lost is the one to make the access? Is that correct?
It's set out, Chair. Now I'll be unable to find it. It's paragraph 7.78, Chair. There are 3 sections of hedgerow that would be lost, approximately 30 metres at the site entrance, as Councillor Gare has said. There's 8 metres to accommodate the access track, which we saw on site this morning. The access track, as was explained to you, will run along an existing public right-of-way, so won't be on the same line of it. But just as you go into the site, there is a small section of hedgerow that would be lost to accommodate the track. And then there is currently an opening into the field where the BESS facility would be located. There's a current opening, but that will need to be widened to approximately 10 metres. So I would suggest about another 5 to 6 metres of hedgerow would be lost to form that. So they are the 3 areas. So there's 2 in addition to where the access would be formed. And as was discussed, Chair, the applicant has responded to that by providing 2 areas of new hedgerow along the southern and western side of the compound, which will more than make up for that. And overall, the BNG gain that will come out of what's proposed would exceed that's being lost, or that would be lost.
Is that the planting we saw on there in the pointy end of the field?
No, that's tree planting.
That's tree planting.
Proposed. Around the southern and western perimeter of the compound, there would be hedgerows planted along those two sides of the compound.
No further questions? Right, we'll move on to now the floor for debate. So, who's going to start us off? Anybody? Go on then, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. My remaining concern in my head is this question of temporary life for 40 years.
You'd speak.
Sorry. My problem that I still have is this temporary life for 40 years. There is a decommission method statement, condition 4. I understand that you can't apply a bond, so you can't make sure that funds exist at the end of the 40 years to carry out the refurbishment. And I also worry about the fact that recycling of batteries could be a problem. Today's technology may not be technology in 40 years' time, and recycling these batteries could be major problems there. I've thought long and hard about that. I've been to site, I've got soaking wet, got muddied, and I consider that the harm is outbalanced by the benefits. I think the benefits in terms of zero energy is great, and I think that the measures that have been undertaken for mitigation in this application does stand scrutiny. So from where I'm sitting at the moment, I will be voting in favour of the officer's recommendation.
Thank you for that, Councillor Jones. Councillor Welton.
Thank you, Chair. Do I have to? Am I on?
You're
Yeah,
on.
I'm on. Okay then. Thank you, Chair. I also will be voting with the officer's recommendation on this. I've made this point, I think, in some of the local plan briefings. I've made it in economic business scrutiny. Originally, this was the Chesterfield Rural Borough Council. If we are to help farmers, and we've heard how working farming is under threat, and if we are to try and increase the diversity of the economics and employment opportunities in the rural area, we can't just say, yes, that's nice, and then go and turn everything down that comes before us. So I was quite moved by the landowners' representations, and I'll be voting in favour. I think a lot of the concerns have all been mitigated in the conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further? I'm sort of with you two on this. I can see the benefits. I think it's quite well laid out in the report. I would like to see. I know there has been some community engagement that's not come to fruition. I would like to see that continued, because I'm sure something could be worked up on that. And I would like to see as much BNG, biodiversity net gain, as can possibly be done on this application. And I know the criteria has been met, but any enhancement on that would be welcome. And that's my position on it. Anybody else want to take part? No? Right, I'm going to set the floor for motions.
Yeah.
Councillor Peterson.
Yes, can I put forward the motion that we accept the officer's recommendation, please?
Okay. Seconded. Right, well, can we put that on the monitors, please? Right. Thank you, members. That's been approved. Yeah. And if you can get Councillor Cooper back in as well, please, yeah. Jane, don't get Councillor Cooper back in.
I'll go and get him, shall I?
Yeah. I thought Torrin had gone actually. David?
Is he gone?
Yeah, Torrin's gone.
All right, fine.
found them?
He is on his way. He's just been caught by them.
Oh, right, okay. Welcome back, Andrew. All right, item 6 on the agenda is application in respect of Elmfield, Ankerbold Road, Tupton. And the reference number on this is NED/25/00039/FL Tupton. I'm now going to hand you over to Colin Wilson, who's going to do the presentation on this application.
Just before we start, Chair, I may need a bit of IT help to ensure I can share the presentation because I seem to have lost the facility. Just bear with me a second. No, I think I'm okay now, Chair. Thank you.
You think you're okay? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. In summary, and as set out in the committee report, officers are of the view that the proposed development represents an acceptable form of development on a site within the defined settlement development limits for Tupton. Officers are satisfied that the proposed development would represent an acceptable visual addition to the site, which would preserve the character and appearance of the area. In addition, for the reasons set out in the officer report, officers consider that the proposed development would not result in any significant...
Colin, we're supposed to have some photos on the screen.
Sorry, this... yeah, sorry. We're not onto the slides yet, so perhaps if I carry on until we get to that point, if that's okay. In addition, for the reasons set out in the officer report, officers consider that the proposed development would not result in any significant loss of residential amenity for the occupiers of adjoining properties. Moreover, guided by the relevant consultation responses, officers are of the view that there are no technical reasons that would warrant a refusal of the application. It is noticed in the officer report that no reference is made to an existing domestic solar panel installation on a flat roof garage at the adjoining property to the north, which is known as Greenacres. Officers consider that there would be an impact on the solar panels in question, including some overshadowing, particularly during the hours around midday when the sun is at its highest. However, officers consider that the solar installation would still be afforded direct sunlight for much of the rest of the day. In this regard, whilst officers accept that there would be some adverse impact, on balance, officers consider that this impact would not amount to significant harm in terms of meeting the challenge of climate change and would therefore not be overriding. On that basis, officers recommend that the application be conditionally approved. And this is the point where we get onto the slides, hopefully. Yeah, great. So, thanks, Amy. So slide 1 is the next one, if possible. Move on. Is that the problem? It's just not moving on.
Just having a few technical issues, well, I'm sure we'll get there eventually.
Okay, thank you. Apologies for that. So slide 1 shows the application site highlighted in yellow. The image shows the linear and sizable nature of the site of application, which extends from its frontage at Ankerbold Road in the east to its common boundary with the major housing development site to the west. Slide 2 similarly shows the site highlighted in yellow. This slide shows a more zoomed in view of the site and its surroundings. Slide 3 comprises the submitted site location plan, which shows the extent of the application site as edged in red and the site surroundings. The site is adjoined to the north and south by detached 2-storey dwellings, respectively known as Greenacre and Summerfield. To the southwestern corner of the application site is a row of 6 properties at the northern edge of Churchview Drive, these being numbers 21 to 31. These properties comprise 2-storey dwellings with north-facing rear elevations and gardens which adjoin the site of application at its southern boundary. Slide 4 shows the proposed site layout plan. This plan illustrates the general arrangement and layout of the proposed development. The proposals comprise the demolition of an existing bungalow from the site and the construction of a 2-storey dwelling in its place. As illustrated on the plan, the proposed 2-storey dwelling would be positioned within the existing ribbon of residential development along the western side of Ankerbold Road. An additional dwelling in the form of a bungalow is proposed in the western element of the site, which currently forms the existing bungalow's substantially proportioned rear garden. The plan shows the proposed bungalow's position in relation to the adjacent properties, including the dwellings on the northern side of Churchview Drive. This plan also details the proposed means of access, which in this case would comprise a newly formed vehicular and pedestrian access at the southeastern corner of the application site. A newly formed driveway would also be formed adjacent to the southern boundary of the site. Parking and circulation areas are also shown on this plan. These areas would be forward of the respective properties' front elevations. Slide 5 shows the proposed elevations of the proposed 2-storey dwelling, which would front Ankerbold Road. As set out in the officer report, officers considered that the proposed dwelling would represent an acceptable visual addition, which would integrate into the existing street scene of Ankerbold Road. Slide 6 shows the proposed elevations of the new bungalow. And slide 7 shows a sectional drawing of the site, which demonstrates how land levels would be lowered so that the position of the proposed bungalow would generally be set at a lower level than the existing land levels, therefore lessening its impact in neighbouring amenity terms, with particular regard to its impact on the amenity levels currently enjoyed by the occupiers of properties on Churchview Drive. This matter is discussed in depth in the officer report. Slide 8 is an officer photo showing the existing bungalow. When viewed square on from Ankerbold Road, members will see that the existing bungalow is adjoined to the north and south by comparatively substantially proportioned 2-storey dwellings. As referred to in the officer report, relatively substantially proportioned 2-storey dwellings represent the prevailing property type in the wider street scene. This image also shows the extent of the site's frontage. Slide 9 is a photo taken within the application site, looking towards the rear elevation of properties at the north of Churchview Drive. This photo shows the relationship between the application site and the adjoining properties. and the element of the site in which the new proposed bungalow would be sited. Slide 10 is a photograph taken from the western end of the site, looking in an easterly direction back towards the existing bungalow and Anchorbold Road beyond. This photo shows the gradual gradient across the application site, with levels falling from a high point in the west, from where the photograph is taken, to its lowest point adjoining Anchorbold Road. Slide 11 shows the existing site frontage and the location of the newly proposed vehicular access towards the far corner of the site. The telegraph pole at the site frontage is situated within the proposed access visibility display in a southern direction. Consequently, it's the view of officers that the telegraph pole will need to be relocated so that the exit visibility required can be achieved. As set out in the officer report, officers consider that this matter can be controlled through the inclusion of an appropriately worded planning condition, and the applicant has set out in the submission that they are in agreement with such a condition being included. Following the completion of the officer report and on reflection, officers consider that the condition should be worded so that it also secures acceptable visibility throughout the construction phase. And that concludes the officer presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Colin. Right. Speakers. We have 4 speakers on this application. The first of which is David Hancock, who will be speaking via Teams. So when you're ready, when we've got the system up and running.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Torin for facilitating for me to join remotely today. The application this afternoon is not a simple replacement dwelling. It's a significant intensification of a sensitive site, demolishing one low, unobtrusive bungalow and inserting 2 new properties into the same plot, one of which sits directly behind the homes on Churchview Drive, and it's the relationship with those residents that brings this application into real difficulty. Members will have seen the plans, and the site section BB makes the impact unmistakable. When you stand in the French doors of number 27 Churchview Drive, which the applicant has used as their reference point, the ridge of the proposed plot 2 rises well above the existing garden backdrop and presents a large elevated gable approaching the boundary. In a row of small and narrow gardens that will be overbearing, enclosing and visually dominant. For the residents of Churchview Drive, their current gardens will no longer fill like gardens, they'll be like walled yards. And that's not an abstract concern, it is a genuine and lasting impact on the amenity and well-being of 4 households. Our local plan is very clear on this. Policy SDC 12 requires development to be well related to its surroundings in layout, height, massing and plot size, and to protect the amenity of existing occupiers, specifically from overbearing, overshadowing and loss of privacy. This proposal fails on the test on every single one of those points. Policy SS7 allows for windfall development on unallocated land only where it is appropriate in scale and location and compatible with adjacent uses. In reality, this stretch of Anchorbold Road and the long rear gardens behind Churchview Drive have a very clear and consistent character. An open, low-density backdrop, making 2 new properties into that space is simply not compatible with that pattern of development. Under policy SDC 3, the loss of that open rear aspect is also a loss of settlement character. Those long gardens are not empty space, they are part of Tupton's landscape setting. Back in 2010, the use of garden was dropped as an automatic acceptance of previously developed land, and even the new very pro-development National Planning Policy Framework reinforces this. Paragraph 75 states that policies should resist inappropriate development of residential gardens, for example where development would cause harm to the local area. Officers and members therefore have full backing to say that this is not the right place for intensified backland development. I think it's also worth pointing out that we've already raised concerns with regard to the splay, and highways themselves have raised the concern that part of it relies on neighbours keeping their heads trimmed. Members, this is about recognising when development conflicts with the character of a place and harms the people who already live there. The applicant's own drawings show the impact clearly. In my view, and in the view of the residents who have contacted me, this impact is simply too great. And for these reasons, I respectfully ask members to refuse the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hancock. Do any members have any questions for Councillor Hancock? Nope. Right, we'll move on to the next speaker, which is Richard Moore, if you'd like to come and take a seat, please, Richard.
Thank you very much for allowing me to talk to you today. Very much appreciate it.
No problem. You have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I'd like to appeal to you all very much from the human aspect of what is going on here and appeal on behalf of the wider community. Plot 1 will have a mass and form that will significantly reduce enjoyment amenity to our own home due to excessive dominance and overshadowing. We appreciate right to view is not applicable as we do not have a scenic view, but from the windows we get a lot of natural daytime sunlight and it will be blocked. We'll be left with a gloomy, oppressive brick wall. We have a disabled resident who lives with us, who spends most of her time in one of the rooms that is going to be seriously affected by this. Plot 1 and 2 will severely impact the privacy of both our home and garden, as well as the impact in privacy of neighbouring properties. We have already had our privacy impacted with a large summer house that has been constructed at an elevated position topographically at the top of the site, where the large bungalow is also to be sited. This has a large window looking into our property, made by worse by harsh pruning and removal of a section of hedgerow by the applicant. During construction, plot 1 will allow builders direct view into our upstairs bedrooms, an extreme nuisance given the close proximity. I would like to reference the parking issues on Ankerbold Road. I don't feel as though that photograph was a fair representation. Ankerbold Road is extremely busy with a lot of parked cars during the weekdays especially. We've already witnessed that the road was blocked by an HGV and a tractor and trailer during one delivery to the site. Vehicles parked opposite the site 6, sometimes 7 days a week. We have safety issues that we're concerned about relating to vehicles navigating access to the site. It's a narrow site, it has restricted access, and with the volume of cars that are regularly parked outside, it's going to cause safety issues. Historically existing and future pollution from the site, we have issues with that. There's been equipment used that's heavy on the diesel, and we have had a lot of fumes coming across our property carried by the prevailing wind, to the point where I myself have felt the effects of carbon monoxide poisoning from it. On 2nd of April, 7:15 a.m, we had a large aggregate lorry left running right next to the boundary and our living room, making the house vibrate. Overall, and on behalf of the wider community, this is unreasonable development. It doesn't really meet anywhere near probably 0.001% of housing needs in our area. It's already had a severe, immeasurable negative impact to the amenity, health and well-being to all those that neighbour the site. I really do want to plead to both the committee and the members to consider how they would feel if they were in our position, and think about how many objection comments have been made, what we've already been subjected to, and the fact we've had the courage to come here today to speak to you all. It's not easy.
Nope. We know that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I welcome your questions if you have any for me.
Do any members have any questions to speak? No? If you'd like to retake your seat in your
Thank you.
gallery. Thank you. Right, the next speaker on this is another objector, which is Catherine Moore. You have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Good afternoon all. The main reason I'm here is because of the enormous impact this is going to have on our property. Obviously, as there's a 3-minute cap, I'll read off bullet points to ensure I'm able to put forward the entirety of our case and to calm my nerves. The largest dwelling, the 4-bedroom, 2-storey house, is far too close to our boundary. This causes immediate safety concerns, including killing the elderly, healthy and well-established hedge, because the roots are just going to be torn up. We're also very concerned with the very heavy construction incorporating deep foundations, undermining and causing subsidence to our very large garage, which the house is to be built right up against. The house also has windows directly facing ours, allowing occupants to see right into our home, and upstairs windows offering clear views all over our garden. It will also permanently block some rooms into at least one of our bedrooms. The entire proposed development is not in keeping with the area or form of established properties and boundaries. It is in direct conflict with the old houses it neighbours and will be a complete domineering, oppressive eyesore to all. The bungalow to the rear is excessively oversized and completely out of keeping with any neighbouring property. And because the garden slopes up at the rear, it puts the bungalow even higher in a more prominent position. As Richard mentioned, our hedge has already partially been ripped out, resulting in us, we've got 2 dogs, we can't access 2/3 of our garden now because the boundary is completely open without our permission. The windows to the rear of the bungalow don't seem to conform to the council's planning rules with regards to line of sight, which is concerning. When we read through the planning rules and policy documents listed on your website, there was a detailed breakdown of what is acceptable in the development, and this seems to breach multiple sections. Sensitive to the characteristics of the local area, including building forms, details, layouts, edges and boundary treatments, are appropriate in scale, height and massing with regards to adjoining buildings and general heights in the area, views and local landmarks and topography and visual impact. They should be neighbourly, respect contact, privacy, boundaries and habitats, none of which has been done. The last point was to avoid relationships between buildings that result in excessive dominance or overshadowing. We feel that the proposed dwellings and activities on the site thus far feel very short of these values set out. Finally, this is not just about ourselves, but many residents who have lived here for many years. They're extremely unhappy about the development, as you can see from the copious amount of objections lodged so far. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Do members have any questions? Councillor Leggett.
Yeah, you mentioned the hedge that had been ripped out. Is that your hedge or is it?
Yeah. All the boundaries to the left of each property is traditionally the property of
landowners.
So our boundary would be the hedge to the left, and next to us, the vicarage is responsible for the fence. Now, normally when Jill lived there, because I knew the lady that lived in the bungalow for many years, and we shared the hedge cutting on it. You know, one year I'd do our side and the top, next side she'd do her side and the top. So we'd take it in turns, and it was like that. We've been there 10 years, and it's... When we moved in there, because obviously a hedge isn't... We've got big dogs, but obviously they get in small spaces, so we actually pruned it back harsh the first year, and we fitted Harris fencing, you know, like you see at builders. Yeah. We fitted Harris fencing in, which has grown, and then allowed the hedge to go through so you couldn't see it. So we knew it was 100% secure boundary, and even that's, it's gone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? No, if you'd like to retake
Thank
the seat.
you.
Thank you. Right, the final speaker we have on this application is Pamela Moody. If you'd like to, also an objector.
Hi everyone. I'm speaking today on behalf of all the residents on Churchview Drive, 25, 27, 29 and 31. Those are the 4 properties most directly affected by this proposal. Our gardens are modest, our homes are close together, and we've generally enjoyed the relatively open aspect to the rear. This application is going to just take that away. The applicant's own cross-sections show that the proposed bungalow sits on raised ground and it reaches almost the height of our first floor windows despite being described as a bungalow. Because it is positioned extremely close to our rear boundaries, the mass and the bulk of the building becomes overwhelming for all 4 homes, again confirmed by the section drawing. This is not minor impact for us. It's not on just one neighbour. It's a major structural impact on 4 separate homes, all at once. The sense of dominance and enclosure this will create is unacceptable to us. Our gardens are very small and this development will sit directly behind them like a high wall. It's not an exaggeration to say it will make our gardens feel more like a prison yard than a relaxing private outdoor space. There will be a profound loss of visual amenity. The relationship between the new build and our homes is simply not neighbourly. The scale, height and proximity was not designed with existing residents in mind. Our households will lose outlook, daylight and a sense of openness that we have reasonably expected to retain. Each household will experience a severe impact, but when it's taken all together, the development harms an entire stretch of Churchview Drive. Planning decisions must consider not just the effect on one boundary, but the wider pattern, and which in our case is stark. It's 4 homes all suffering significant and permanent loss. As far as we know, national planning policy requires developments to ensure a high standard of amenity for existing residents. This proposal fails that requirement. A building that sits too high, too close and too dominant cannot be made acceptable, again just by calling it a bungalow. We are not opposed to a sympathetic development, but are opposed to a layout and a building form that damages unilaterally the amenity of 4 households, something that we believe is extremely rare and in our view plainly unacceptable. Once built, that impact cannot be undone. For these reasons, and on behalf of all the affected residents, I respectfully ask members to refuse this application or at least require a fundamental redesign that protects the amenity of the homes on Churchview Drive. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do members have any questions? No, if you'd like to retake your seat. Thank you very much. Right then, members, you've now got the opportunity to ask questions of officers. Councillor Welton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Two questions. First of all, going back to the original site location, there's a major development next to it. Is that correct? Yeah. So I just wanted to ask. The first question is: does that put any weight? Should you put any weight either for or against, following your recommendations on the fact that there is a major development on adjacent to those plots? Yep. And the second, that's okay if that's the answer, no weight. But the second question was just if you could just flesh out a bit on the amenity. I know in layman's terms, I know there's no right to light, right to review, whatever, in that how the conditions that you've set have mitigated against any loss of amenity. So that's my second question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. Just in terms of the initial question in relation to the major housing development site to the west, that's obviously in the process of any application. We are looking at the application site and its immediate surroundings, and in this case we don't believe that there are any issues in terms of the compatibility of the proposed bungalow and the western element of the site and the wider scheme to the west.
So through the chair, there's no weight to be put on it at all. Okay. Thanks.
There's weight in the sense that we have to assess the application site and its surroundings in any.
But today, there's no weight either way.
Significant material impact.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. And then in terms of the second question, in terms of amenity, as set out in section 7 of the officer report, we've done a detailed assessment of the impact of both elements of the schemes in terms of neighbouring amenity and wider elements of the scheme, such as increased activity, the creation of a driveway through the site, etc. Specifically, you raised queries about conditions. In terms of plot 1, the two-storey dwelling, that only comprises one north-facing, side-facing elevation, window opening, which would be obscurely glazed by condition and non-opening. So we believe that that would mitigate against some of the concerns relating to direct overlooking of the adjacent property to the north. Equally, those kind of conditions can be imposed for the southern elevation as well in terms of the impact from there. But overall, we believe that there is a generous separation distance between the proposed dwelling at plot 1 and the adjacent properties to the north and south as a consequence of, in the case of the property to the north, an existing flat roof garage which provides a degree of separation between the habitable room windows in the southern facing elevation of Greenacre, which is the property to the north, and equally the creation of the driveway along the southern boundary of the application site would provide an intervening parcel of land free from built development, essentially, that would, in our view, provide sufficient separation distances between those properties. In terms of the proposed bungalow, we've, as set out in the officer report, we've applied the 25-degree rule, which is set out in the council's design guide, Successful Places. Initially, we estimated that the very top of the gable elevation that would face the properties on Churchview Drive would marginally fail that rule as set out in Successful Places. But notwithstanding that, given the very small amount of built development that would be seen above the 25-degree line, we on balance considered that the proposed dwelling would not result in any significant loss of outlook or would not be overbearing for the occupiers of the properties on Churchview Drive. But in the interest of trying to achieve a further betterment, we broached this with the applicant, and they've subsequently, as set out in the report, they've looked at the site levels, and by digging that property into the existing site levels, you've seen the gradients on the photo where they fall in a easterly direction. Essentially, they can achieve full compliance with that 25-degree rule, which to us indicates that there would clearly not be any unduly adverse impact in terms of overshadowing, loss of outlook, or the development won't be of an overbearing nature.
If I could just add, Chair, to on the back of what Colin's saying, you know, the reason that we have the guidance within Successful Places is to, you know, be able to objectively assess the level of impact that is arising from a development. Obviously, any development results in change. The question is that adverse change in relation to the impact on neighbouring occupiers? And whilst, you know, guides like the 25-degree rule, they are a rule of thumb, but nevertheless, we're obviously transparent in terms of publishing this guidance as to how we assess those impacts. And where there's conformity with the rules of thumb that we use to assess those impacts, effectively what we're saying is we're struggling to identify an adverse impact. That doesn't mean that there isn't an impact, and it's not to undermine the comments of residents who feel that there will be an impact. But what we've got to assess is that impact so adverse as to be able to refuse the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. Any further questions? Councillor Liggett?
Yeah, can I just ask, what is the distance between the new bungalow's wall and the residents on Churchview Drive's hedge?
Just bear with me, I'll just have a quick look in the officer report. We have set that out, not in terms of, yeah, so it's between 8.5 and 11.5 metres. That's between the rear, north-facing rear elevations of the property on Churchview Drive and the gable end elevation of the proposed bungalow.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Chair. Just for the officers, really. Adrian, what is the minimum distance that it has to be? Councillor Liggett has just pinched my question, mostly. What is the minimum distance from the Churchview Drive to the nearest point of the new bungalow, or is that just with an openable light? Or
we don't set a minimum distance. It's a matter of judgment in all cases, and in this instance, as Colin said, it's 8.5 to 11.5 metres, but we've also taken into account, as Colin said, about the digging in of the bungalow. We've also taken into account the orientation in that the bungalow would be to the north of those properties, so have a lesser impact overall. We've also taken into account that the elevation facing the properties has just got one gable element, and the rest of it has got roofs that fall away from that boundary. So when you take all those things into consideration and the fact it's a single storey property, we're of the view that the impact on the amenity of those properties is not going to be as harmful as such that it would lead to us recommending refusal of the application.
I just got stuck in my head, Chair, that it was something to do with a 12-metre rule between the property to property. Did that not used to be the case? And secondly, my other question, which you touched on, was, is it not possible to dig that further into the topography to lose some of the gable end? Because I think that's the portion of it that gives a bit more of a poor visual impact.
Yeah, just in terms of the first, Chair, I believe Councillor Elliott's referring to rear elevations to gable elevations on two-storey properties. So a lot of the rules of thumb, the 21 metres that you've heard us talk about, 10.5 metre rear garden depths, they all generally relate to two-storey properties. And in this instance, because it's only a single-storey property, the impact of the development is less than if it would be a two-storey property. I think that's just.
I accept about the two-storey part of it, but when I look at the plan there, it shows Velux windows in the roof, so it's really not, is it? It's almost a two-storey. It's a dormer bungalow, shall we call it?
Certainly, the impact into the new bungalow would probably be more impactful than the view out, because by definition of Velux, or a roof window will allow you to look up and out rather than
forward.
Across.
Yeah.
So
it's not exactly a dormer, I accept that.
But just in terms of the second question, in terms of the digging in, Colin's, I think, able to help you with that.
Yeah.
With the digging.
I'm sure if necessary.
Just in terms of that one, we've broached that as mentioned with the applicant's agent, and initially they looked to achieve the 25-degree rule. So actually they've had two attempts at this sectional drawing, and on the second one they've actually reduced the overall finished floor level by a total of 500 mil. So it's a significant amount, and that's at the point of the most affected part of the dwelling, if you like. So that's where the gable, the ridge of the gable would be. That's 500 mil below existing ground level. So further into the site, it would be more. It would be dug in more.
And if you'd permit me, Chair, I had another one there, Colin, and that was the new estate that's being built also. How much visual impact is that going to get? Because I can't really see where the last house is going to be built. I see there's a turning circle on the end of it, so it must come round there. How far away is the new estate in relation to Churchview as well? Because surely that'd have a visual impact as well, won't it?
Just in terms of that, Chair, I can perhaps help. That the area that you saw on the slide in the presentation, the beige area, is all permitted housing development, and that will come right up to all those boundaries in terms of gardens.
That's what worries me. Churchview will just be enveloped in new houses, and the bungalow's not going to help it either.
But in terms of the impact on Churchview of that development, you'll have seen that Churchview is set well. The end property of those is set well away from that boundary to the west, and of course it will then incorporate all those distances that we talked about earlier in terms of garden depth, and the development at Churchview will have been taken into account when that development was permitted, because it was permitted post Churchview, so it was existing, so it will have been taken into account.
Thank you, Adrian.
Yeah, Councillor
I just wonder what the hedge root protection measurement is needed.
Sorry, I don't believe there are any conditions that we have put in the recommended conditions that would require that, but if members felt that that was necessary, we could certainly include a condition to that effect.
Just remember that coming up on the development on Stretton.
Condition 6, Chair, is the standard landscaping condition that you'll have seen on many housing developments, and does include a requirement for details of measures to protect any trees and hedgerows to be retained on the site. So it would be incorporated within that condition if you were minded to grant permission this afternoon. It clearly doesn't take into account any works that's done to this point, but that would lie out. Normally, that would lie outside planning protection in any case, to a garden boundary.
Any further questions? I've got one. Just raising, just on what Councillor Hancock mentioned, actually, because he mentioned policy SDC3, and I just noticed from the report that that is not covered off in the actual report at 6.1, page 67.
That policy, Chair, is normally a wider consideration in terms of how development will impact on a wider area of development, such as we discussed with the earlier battery storage system, but that doesn't take away the fact that you need to consider how any new development of even of this small scale nature would sit within the area that it would form part, and so it should conform to it in terms of its character and scale, etc. Colin talked about this earlier. The house to the front would lie within a row of very mixed development, and certainly some two-storey units. So in terms of that overall character, officers are of the view that a new two-storey unit here wouldn't harm the overall character and appearance of the area. The properties on Churchview are also two-storey properties. Those on Station Road are two-storey properties. So our overall view is that a new two-storey unit wouldn't harm that overall and overriding character. The property to the rear, the bungalow, has been designed specifically to be accommodated within that space, as we've discussed. It would have very limited views from the wider roadscape or where there would be a general public realm impact. And so in terms of that and its wider impact, officers would be of the view that it would have limited impact in any case. But notwithstanding that, there is currently a bungalow on the site. So again, as officers, we wouldn't take the view that a new bungalow in this location would be contrary to that wider character, that wider feel of the area.
Okay. Thank you, Adrian. Any further questions? No. As there are no further questions, we'll move on to the debate. I want the floor for debate. Councillor Liggett.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I know people aren't entitled to view and light, but they are entitled to quality of life, and obviously these residents are going to be highly affected by this. It's very difficult, but I know we're not supposed to take into consideration the other major development, but it's going to impact on them hugely, I think, with that development on that side, and then suddenly a brick wall, because they have got very short gardens, and basically it's going to be turned into like a courtyard. If they're going to have no outlook at all. So I think it will affect their lives personally.
Councillor Welton.
Yes, I speak as somebody who's had a large intrusive extension from a neighbour which is tall and overlooks my land to the other side. Someone did it exactly the same a few years ago. The point being, yes, it's annoying and yes, it's negative, but that's not the same as meeting the planning conditions for amenity. Thus my questions on the level. So I probably am satisfied that the officers have done quite a lot of work in terms of looking at how you can mitigate this. And I know, it's a windfall. It's going from 2 units to an increase of 1. I also asked the question about should we take into account this major development next door, and I think the answer was that's going through its own process, and we can't actually put any weight either way, and we have to be bound. If you are going to go against officer recommendation, you have to have something, I think, that is clearly material and related to the policies. And I think densification as an overall policy, subject to mitigation on amenity and other issues, if you don't want to affect settlement limits, which is important to certainly to me as a councillor, and if you don't want to affect this isn't a greenbelt issue. If you want to try and preserve that, then densification is one of the options, and windfall sites are one of the options that enable us to meet our targets. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wharton. Anybody else want to enter the debate? Well, I'll enter it then. Right, I'm very much of the same opinion as Richard. Really, it's very. We're bound by these conditions, and we're looking at an application that we've got no material reason for not granting, which is, but also we do feel for the residents that are obviously going to be affected by this. This application.
Lee, don't you think SDC 12 then, relation to privacy, overshadowing and overbearing impacts?
I think that's quite well covered in the report, Heather, if I'm honest. Anybody else want to contribute? Is it so you're putting that motion on the table? Right. Has it got a seconder?
I'll second it, Chair.
Okay. Can we put that to the vote, please? Right, members, thank you. That's 7-3 in favour of the granting of that application. Thank you very much. Thank you, members of the public, for attending and speaking. Right, I'll just let members of the public leave, and we'll move on to item 8 on the agenda. Right, I'll now hand over to Adrian, who's is planning appeals, item 8 on the agenda. Appeals lodged and determined. Over to you, Adrian.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, just to note that we've had a further 4 appeals lodged in the last period, as members will have seen. Particular note, members may recall debating and determining the solar panel scheme at Morton, so that's now subject for an appeal, so we'll be seeking to defend that coming forward. So that's probably the one to note of the 5 that are there. Of the 2 appeals determined, Chair, both have been dismissed, and as I always say to members, very well worth reading, especially the one at Spikewinder Farm at Barlow, which is an interesting greenbelt case of a barn that was the applicant sought to change its use, and the inspector sided with us, and Colin in particular, who was the officer dealing with this, made the assessment that he concluded that, as we did, that the barn wasn't actually a conversion. It was in effect a new build, and therefore didn't comply with your policies. Interesting and short decision, which, as I say, I'd recommend you to read. In terms of the other decision, Chair, more wide-ranging, but dealt with issues of noise in particular and proximity to the Dronfield bypass. Again, makes very interesting reading, more technical in detail, but as always, Chair, they're always worth reading because they show, hopefully, that the advice that we're giving you, certainly in these 2 cases, is sound and based on your own planning policies and those of national government. Happily take any questions, of course, Chair.
Okay. Members have any questions on the report? Do we agree to note that report? Yeah, just show of hands. Thank you. Right, I have no urgent business, so I'll close the meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance. And have a good Christmas. We're not having another meeting till after then.